Hello, everyone. So this is going to be a talk about paths and um, our paths of life and what brings us to the place that we're at. So a lot of times the story of what takes place in life determines who we are and what is it. So when you meet someone and you say, "How did you learn what you learn? How did you learn about presence and peace and grace? Did you open a book and read it? How did you learn it?" And everyone is going to have a different story. So here's my story. Um, my story starts with a yearning for trying to find home. It's been the search for home the entire time. I even wrote a book called Opening Home. And I labeled my first CD that I put together was called Opening Home. And it's about opening the home that is the presence of everything. So what takes a person from just living life to suddenly realizing that, okay, I need to go into and find home in some other place besides the story of life? So I'm going to go all the way back into a memory and into a story that took place when I was 15. And so there I was at age 15. And it was Christmas. I might have been 14 or 15. And life was nice. I just remember being 14 or 15, and I had a little drum set I was playing, and I was listening to music, and I was enjoying life. And you're just a child, and you're just oblivious, and everything is fun. And the day after Christmas, my father stood in front of me and I remember this like it was yesterday, in the foyer of our 4-bedroom house. I had a older brother, an older sister, and a younger sister, all teenagers, and a mother. And my father stood in front of me in the foyer of the 4-bedroom house with 2 suitcases the day after Christmas. And he looked at me and he said, "Hey, I need your attention." And I said, "What's up?" And I looked at him. And before that, I was just playing. And now suddenly I look up and there he is standing there with this serious look on his face, 2 suitcases. And he says, "I have to leave." And I said, "What do you mean?" And he said, I can't live here anymore. Your mother and I are divorcing and I'm leaving." I didn't understand. And I looked at him. I don't even think I hugged him. And he said, "I have to go." And he opened the door and he got in the car and he drove away. I ran up into my bedroom and I looked out the window and I watched his car drive away. And little did I know that that was the very last moment that I would ever have 2 parents and a feeling of home and family in my life. 20 minutes prior to that. I then remember at that moment just going and putting on this. I was listening to Southern rock music, and there was a band called the Outlaws, and they had a song called "I Can't Stop Loving You," which is, I think Phil Collins redid it. And I remember just playing that song over and over and over in my bedroom and just crying until my sister came in and comforted me. And then throughout the next few months, I experienced this. My older sister, she took on the role of a mother and was very comforting and helpful. But she then jumped into the arms of a boyfriend and dove into that. But she was very supportive, and I love her for that. My younger sister dove into the arms of another boyfriend, She ended up getting pregnant. We had to get her an abortion. Here I was at age 15, taking my younger sister, who was 13, for an abortion. My older sister took her. I was there to support. My older brother took off. I was never there. My father, he would call once in a while. And my mother, she rallied up and went into her room, locked the door, and took prescription drugs and disappeared. She would lock her door. I'd have to take a screwdriver and get it open, tuck her in at night. So when this took place, the family just scattered like mice everywhere. I dove into music. In order to deal with this, I went and bought every Kansas album I could find, and I just listened to it. And I made music my home. I had uncles and aunts, but no one really came around. I had friends and neighbors in the area. Some of them came around, but no one really asked, "Hey, how are you? Your life has turned into Lord of the Flies at this point. What's going on?" And at that point, I just went to work, tried to figure out what to do with school, got my driver's license, and moved on through life. That experience kept going and going and going. It went to a point where holidays just became emptiness. Life became emptiness. And it wasn't until I was probably later on in my 40s where I then started realizing, okay, there is another realm of existence to look into. So from age 16 to about 30, I just dealt with it by just dealing with it one day at a time. I would get lost in music. I played music. I was going to a private school at that time. It was a private Catholic school. It was so far away. I would get on the bus, and I would sit on the bus and never talk to anyone. The bus ride was an hour. And then I'd go into the school. The high school was an all-boys high school, and I would not talk to anyone. I think I made one friend in 4 years. The rest of the time I just spent alone. The counselors at the school never asked. All they said was, "Hey, SATs are coming up. Are you ready for these?" I sat one day taking an SAT, and all I thought about was how there's no family at home, and who was I? Completely abandoned. I felt like an alien. I took the SAT. I think I got 400 on it. I just filled in the bubbles. I didn't care. I don't even think I read the damn thing. I just filled in all the bubbles and handed in the paper and said, "Here." I couldn't think about college or future or anything. I did get into this high school band, and I enjoyed playing drums. And then I got into some rock bands after high school and played there, and I made more friends. And we drank a lot of beer. And then I went into community college for a little bit, failed out, went back in, failed out, went back in, got all A's, and decided to go get a business degree. I did that, and I got a job. And then ended up getting married and having 3 kids. After 15 years of marriage and 3 kids, I then found myself suddenly realizing that I had married the same type of energy as my mother. And this woman was beautiful and amazing, and she helped very much in creating these 3 beautiful children. But then what happened was that marriage ended, and I once again had a repeat, almost an identical repeat of the same situation I had when I was 16. It just completely repeated itself. And this time I found myself completely alone for 10 years. I would go through every holiday, just me. There was no one there. I remember taking a hike one Thanksgiving afternoon and being in these woods and realizing that within 2 miles away was a nice warm house with an entire family in there having Thanksgiving dinner. And in that house were my children and my ex-wife and the entire family that didn't want to see me anymore. And I learned during this time of those 10 years, I learned where to find home. At that point, the pain became so bad that I could not think my way out of it. And it was a combination of the recent divorce and a combination of the complete abandonment from when I was a child and trying to figure things out. It was a combination of all those things. And so what I did was I sat there and completely surrendered into which was just a mysterious presence at that time. And I did this for years, reading different books, looking, studying different things. I was studying Reiki and healing and all of that, and I did all of that. And then one day, finally, something hits that was really dark. And I then asked a friend of mine who was a non-duality teacher, I said, how do I keep this presence and peace? How do I keep this in life? And he said, look deeply to see if Mike exists. And it was at that moment that I realized, oh my gosh, all of everything that has happened has been just a story. And that my true home has been here appearing as everything. And in those moments where I was just dropped to the floor in tears and would cry. And a lot of that happened on holidays. You go through a holiday by yourself, literally wake up on Christmas morning, and there's no one to go see. You don't have a brother or sister to see because my siblings don't even talk to each other anymore. I was never invited. And you get up in the morning on Christmas morning and there's no one to go see. No one. You have nothing to do all day. So for a while you just fake it and say, it's just Tuesday, it's just Tuesday. But then the entire society is out there and you see them. You see families. And when that takes place, you're forced. You're forced. I had one Christmas I woke up and I'd wrapped a couple of poetry books that I'd written, and I decided to give them out as gifts to people. I walked into a 7-Eleven, and there was a Chinese man behind the counter. I gave him the book and said, Merry Christmas, hoping that I would just connect in some way with this gentleman, and he'd say, thank you, Merry Christmas, you're important, I love you. He took the book, and he tried to ring it up. He thought I was buying it. I said, no, that's for you. And he went, huh? And he opened it up and he flipped through a couple pages and said, thanks, next. And that was it. So, and I then, at that point, then drove over to a beautiful, it was a mountain where they had statues of Mary all over the place. And people go there for prayer and meditation. So I went there and I'm sitting there in prayer and meditation saying, I'm just going to find peace. As I'm sitting there by myself by this beautiful statue of Mary, and I'm down this hill, and there's like a little stream there. It's very peaceful. This bus comes up behind me, up on the top of the hill, and out of this bus, an entire family comes out. And the children are running around, everybody's singing and laughing and having family. And there I am. And I'm going, oh, you gotta be kidding me. I'm trying to just find some place to step into that doesn't offer tears. And I'm sitting there doing this. and just meditating into peace. And then all of a sudden, a whisper says to me, open your hands. And I opened my hands, and I realized that all of that noise and commotion and happiness and laughter was me. It was the boundless, endless presence of being that I am. And I sat there and something had lifted off me. And I went, I've been home the entire time. And that this home is this boundless presence that has been appearing as tears, pain, separation, story. There are no other people. The other people are just appearances of this energy and presence appearing. So this glimpse would happen and then back up. And it would happen and back up. And it would go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth, until finally it just started opening up and flowering more and more and more and more. So that's my story of what drew me to this place I am now, where I look at everything as a mystery. I look at life as not separate individuals going through stories, but I look at it as a presence. And the reason that I do this is because I have to. Looking at it as a separate mic here and a story here, which has done nothing but cause pain, doesn't work. It creates one giant feeling of you are not loved, because everything has just been dissolving, 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 dissolving. So I then live as everything is the open home. It's the open home appearing as everything. And so from that moment of being in the statue place, oh gosh, what's it called? Something to Lords. I don't know. I can't think of it right now. From sitting there in that place and having this experience, I wrote a book called Opening Home. And one thing I remember writing in that book was I went back to that place and I sat in the rain with my laptop. And I wrote about the amount of energy and dedication and deliverance it takes in order to become a separate individual and to hold up that character, when we in truth are this open presence appearing literally as everything. And it's to a point where you can even look back at it, and I can even look back at it and look back at all of these memories of that path and realize nothing ever happened. All of that took place, but there was no me that it ever touched. And that this stillness and silence that is here now, speaking as this, was never touched by it. And so now what I do is, when I look for home, I sense it and feel it everywhere. And it's a quiet stillness. And at times, this quiet stillness of home is flavored with appearances of families that come in and children, and perhaps a conversation with a brother or sisters, or not. And all of that just appears and comes and goes. But this here is never and has never been touched. So I wanted to share that so that people sort of understand who I am. I didn't just read some book and say, oh, here's the truth of presence. It came from lessons of life, wearing down the ego, wearing down the false identity of a separate me actually doing things. The pain of all of that is still around at times. It shows up. The pain of, wow, that's experience when I was a young kid is so horrific. The abandonment energy of that. But what I can do now is it's almost like I'm this beautiful boat on this river that has stopped, and there's a peaceful lagoon there. But then coming down the river is this scene of that, and I can take it and I can paint it clear and look at it, and I can sense it and say, and here it is. And what is it that is looking at this scene that took place? It is just an open presence of grace, is looking upon an open presence of a grace that appeared as all of this. It did happen, and it was there, and it was felt, but now I can look and sense the feelings as, okay, I welcome them. They offer teachings. They are the teachers to turn me away, to go inward, to express and paint outward, and to finally settle into what has always been there, home. Thank you.